ABC Sports is in Canada for the Molson Indy Vancouver. Round 16 of the CART FedEx Championship Series. Juan Montoya's 6 victories is a new CART rookie record. Montoya's on-the-edge driving style allows him to shine on tracks where there is no testing. 4 of his 6 wins came on such tracks. Today, he goes for lucky number 7 on the temporary street circuit at Vancouver. And Montoya is on the pole here today, but when last we left you, there was a lot of confrontation. Jimmy Vasser and Robbie Gordon, Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy. A lot of concern with blocking. None of that has really gone away.
Emotions are high. There's controversy on and off the track. Drivers at the front, of course, they're fighting for the championship, but other drivers, they're fighting for their professional careers. They've brought that fight to the streets of Vancouver. It's narrow, it's bumpy, and it's damp. All the makings for great racing action.
2 weeks ago at Chicago, Paul Tracy and Michael Andretti battled for third in the championship as well as the race. Their battle ended against the wall, leaving Michael frustrated and angry.
What is he thinking? I don't understand. I mean, does he have a death wish? Is he trying to kill us both? I don't know.
In the past, there's been basically in recent years no interplay, no relationship between Tracy and Andretti. They just don't talk to each other. But after Chicago, there was a breakthrough telephone conversation, lasted nearly an hour. They basically said, we can't go back and assess blame. We can only hope now that what we can do is find room for each other somehow on the racetrack. They're second, I should say third and fourth in the championship points. Much is at stake. A lot of activity down here in the pits. We've got a heavy rain shower. These fans stand by to watch. It'll be Tracy from row 2 and Andretti from row 4 at green flag.
Yeah, let's take a look at that starting grid on the front row. As mentioned, Juan Montoya has the pole with P.J. Jones outside, his best starting position.
And Paul, it was an awesome performance for P.J. Jones, and it sets up a great battle for the front row. Remember back at the last race in Chicago afterwards, Juan Montoya very critical of P.J. Jones's driving. In fact, he said the only thing P.J. Jones is good for is getting in other people's way. Well, that has now given P.J. a great incentive to try and beat Montoya into the first corner. The only problem, he says, my car's not too good in the wet.
Then looking back into the second row, it is Paul Tracy on the inside with Franchitti outside. Now, Dario Franchitti is a master of the temporary circuit. He won at Toronto and Detroit earlier this year. He's looking for a repeat performance of his win here 1 year ago. In row 3, Mark Blundell and super sub Roberto Moreno. The fourth row, Gil de Ferran and Michael Andretti. Back in row number 5. Greg Moore and Mauricio Guzman. Now Moore got his first career win at Milwaukee in '97 and then on the streets of Detroit. He has last 3 wins that have been on ovals, and he'd like to conquer the streets again. His teammate Carpentier is inside 6. Max Pappas is on the outside of row 6. Pappas captured his first career pole at Chicago, but finished 5th. He hopes to end his string of bad luck with a victory here today. The 7th row, Brian Herta and Scott Pruitt. Tony Kanaan and Jimmy Vasser make up the 8th row. The 9th row is Cristiano D'Amata and Michel Jourdain Jr. Robbie Gordon and Mimo Gidley are the 10th row. In row 11, Jan Magnussen and Richie Hearn. The 12th row, Naoki Hattori and Al Unser Jr., who's never finished worse than 5th here. Andrea Montermini, welcome back to the series. And Ilio Castroneves outside 13. Luis Garcia Jr. is alone in the 14th row. A little over a mile and a half around this course. It is still raining hard. They say it will be a single file start of this race, so that'll put Montoya out in front with Jones in behind him. That, of course, owing to the rain. Let's look at the track here.
Big changes from last year to this year. The corner that leads on the pit straight last year was a flat-out 4th gear left-hand corner. They've now put in a chicane to slow it down. There used to be a chicane in the middle of the back straightaway. Now they come off this final corner at 155 miles an hour, which sets them up for the primary passing area. They enter this back section at 190 miles an hour in the dry. They'll want to go towards the inside to make the pass, but it's bumpy down there. Drivers that have tried it this weekend have found themselves airborne.
So now as you look down from the Honda Helicam on the Concord Pacific Place here, new configuration to the track. Despite the heavy rain, which has really picked up in the last half hour, the fans are here and they're looking forward to what ought to be a very interesting, if not good, race. The The weather will become, as we always say, an equalizer to those without perhaps the horsepower that some of the other cars have. We'll also see drivers shine. You've mentioned, for example, Mark Blundell is exceptional in the rain.
Mark is great in the rain, so is Jill DeFerrin and a number of the other drivers. But as we watch this final lap before they go green, Vancouver has more painted lines than any other street course that the FedEx Champ cars compete on, particularly the crosswalk lines. There are large blocks of white paint. In the rain, they are absolutely treacherous. They are slick as ice.
In this morning's practice, which was in a light rain, Helio Castroneves, who starts 26th, actually was 6th quick in the morning practice, so you expect a great deal out of him today. And as you look down through the order of the field with so much on the line, they come onto the pit straight, but if you look way down, you'll see the yellow flag flying. That's because they're going to run several laps here without a green flag, just to get everybody accustomed to the circuit, I assume is what they're thinking.
One of the things that we don't want the viewers at home to get confused over, there's a separate support pits at the opposite end of the track. You'll see a pit in and a pit out. That's not the pit entry and the exit that the Champ cars use. So now they'll be coming around. They'll do one more lap. Keep in mind, the visibility is treacherous for the drivers. It's very easy to have the inside of their shields fogged up. If the cars aren't sealed well, they can actually get water inside the footbox area, which makes the pedals very, very slick. And of course, there's the electronics issue. If the electronics get wet, these cars shut off.
In that PPG pace car in front of the field, Maribeth Harrison, who is from this area and is a rookie, first time ever as a pace car driver. And with this weather, she's got her work cut out for her. Jan?
Well, one of the things the crews have to do, Paul, is decide, do I send my car out with a wet setup or a dry setup, because they are hoping that as this afternoon progresses, that we might have some dry conditions. Well, the situation for P.J. Jones is that they have chosen a mostly dry setup. So he could be in a little bit of trouble here off the start, but they think that we are going to have drying conditions. Let's get down to Gary Gerald.
And for Juan Montoya, who leads this single file procession, we talked to Morris Nunn just before engine started, and I said, Morris, when you flipped the coin, did it come up dry or did it come up wet? He grinned and said, it came up tails, and I said, let's go 2 out of 3. Then he grinned again and said, we are going with a wet setup. It wasn't 3 minutes after that that this heavy shower hit the track, and a big smile creased the face of Morris Nunn. However, skies brightening off to the west. If it dries, it becomes a whole different ballgame. This is going to be a genuine adventure for both drivers and teams.
In terms of the scoring, the race has in fact begun. The clock is started, although they are started under yellow. Now, after 3/4 of the season, look at the laps led. Look at rookie Montoya, who has already captured Rookie of the Year honors. He did that at Chicago, but Dario Franchitti may not have the laps led, but he's definitely been in the fight. As we take a look at the point standings, Montoya may lead it, but Montoya only leads that point fight by just a very few, 5 in fact, with Montoya adding the 1 point for the pole. And since Morris Nunn was mentioned, you know, he had an option not to be here. He could have been. He had an invitation to Clay Regazzoni's 60th birthday. He thought seriously about taking it, and I think probably now he wishes that he had. Regazzoni from Formula One, of course, in a run at the Indianapolis 500 driving for Bill Simpson.
We talk about wet and dry setups. The difference there, Paul, is with less adhesion because of the water, they want to soften the springs, soften the shock absorbers, perhaps disconnect the sway bars to allow the cars to roll more to get more mechanical grip. Now, the problem is if it dries out, the cars roll too much, they lose all the downforce that's created by the bottom of the car, and the car's not stable. The problem P.J. Jones has, he has a dry setup, stiffer springs, stiffer dampers, stiffer bars, which means that he'll have no grip at all. It'll be like driving on polished concrete in a parking garage, and he'll have a very difficult time just trying to hang on to that race car in the opening laps of this race.
So you have all of those different things mixing together, including how is Franchitti and Montoya on the streak circuits. Well, when you look at that, they're in reality, when you look at things overall, Franchitti is slightly behind, but only slightly. They're really pretty evenly paired. So much will happen once we go green here. The race is underway, but it'll be a little while before we see green. We'll be back. And coming up Saturday, ABC Sports College football with regional action. Check your local listings and then get post-game analysis each week from ABC's John Saunders online. The Bowl Championship Series is online at ESPN.com. That's part of the Go Network. At Vancouver, the rain continues to fall, and they continue to circle, but they are under the yellow, though 2 laps are complete in the race. And Luis Garcia Jr. slowed down. That's Naoki Hattori that's off the right side of the race course. He apparently stalled the car. As you said, Parker, the whole thing with all the water getting into the electronics can have a dastardly effect on the engines.
It can have a big problem on all the systems of the car and the drivers. This morning, the morning warm-up was in damp conditions, probably more representative of what these drivers will be able to do this afternoon. Tony Kanaan was quickest. We saw Andrea Montermini for his first ride for Dan Gurney's All-American Racing Car. He was also in the top 10. Cristiano D'Amata, also Mimo Gidley driving for the Dale Coyne stable, also going very, very quickly. We've always referred to rain as a great equalizer if they're able to pass, which will be difficult. I think you and I were both surprised when we lapped around here earlier this weekend in the PPG pace cars of how bumpy and how undulating this track is. So keep in mind, in the rain, these cars, even though there still will be approaching speeds of 180 miles an hour, are still very unforgiving, especially over these bumps.
Tactics by the crews can be fantastic on a wet circuit. Jan Bikas, what are they thinking at Team Green?
Well, the interesting thing, Paul, is that the Team Green cars are not unanimous in their choice for where they want to go. Just spoke with Tony Cicali, who, of course, makes the calls for Paul Tracy. He said, well, we are leaning more towards the dry setup. So I walked down to the next pit for Dario Franchitti and said, what are you going to do, Don Halliday? And he says, we have more towards the wet. So even amongst the teams, they have different ideas of how they want to start this race. Should be really exciting once we get a green.
3 laps are now complete. Here's one of those stats that's all but meaningless. It's the 13th race that Montoya has led this year. Let's go to Gary Gerald now.
Well, earlier today in our preview on Kart Today over on ESPN2, we talked about the setup of getting these cars balanced, and Parker was alluding to the bumps and how rough it can be and the toll it takes on both the driver and the equipment. Here's some visual evidence. This is a broken skid plate that started out as 8-inch thick aluminum underneath the car of Mark Blundell. In just 23 laps, roughly 40 miles around this place on Friday, he wore through it and it eventually broke off. Now, common logic would say, what do you do to keep the car from bottoming out so strongly like that? It would seem like you would raise the ride height, but that's exactly the wrong thing to do, because as you raise it, the car then begins to porpoise and it goes boom and boom when it hits those bumps, and it wears through the skid plate underneath the car. So instead, they lower the ride height, stiffen the suspension. It's a tougher ride on the driver, but you go boom, 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 boom over those bumps. And you really feel them, as Parker can attest, because there's a key spot in that sweeper through 5 and down the back straightaway into 6 into a critical braking area where these cars are wallowing all over the place. You really got your hands full.
So you want that second thing and no boom boom when you're going fast here at Vancouver. We're still waiting for them to turn them loose. When they do, I guarantee you this is going to be something to see. Wide World of Sports Mobile Update looks at something that's been on the minds of the drivers all season, but really came to a head 2 weeks ago in Chicago. It's called blocking, and the drivers are talking about it heatedly.
It's a touchy area because there's ways of doing it where it's not dangerous, and there's ways of doing it where guys really put guys in dangerous situation. And you know, it's all just having respect for each other, not doing anything sudden and all that.
When you're gonna be lapped, come on. You know, you lost already 1.5 minutes. And in the oval, it's okay, you can wait maybe 5 laps or something to wait if it goes yellow. But you can't screw someone's race like that, you know? It's pretty bad.
Tell the drivers to pass. Just stick the nose in there and pass me. If he's faster, pass me. It's that easy. Nothing with the rules.
Well, as you saw right there, Helio Castroneves came in, topped off fuel, so already the team's thinking about how they will go to the end game. And remember, one of the other possibilities here, though there is a scheduled distance here of 90 laps, it's also very possible, given the rain, that this will become a timed race. There are 5 laps already into the record book, but of course none of them at speed. When they come back to the green and finally get a green flag, then they will have to start single file, and they cannot pass until after they cross the start-finish line. Jan Bikas?
Paul, we always talk about the fuel strategy, and we know that in the past, this race has always been a two-stop race. But a lot of the teams are saying if it stays wet, they get such good fuel economy because they actually would try and reduce the horsepower from the engine to make them easier to drive. And in fact, this may turn into a one-stop race.
Naoki Hattori's car up on the hook. They say that was a brake problem with the rear brakes as they were trying to get that car going. And then also, they have decided, and have had it out really for a couple of minutes now, we're a little late in reporting this to you, that they put one of those jet dryers on the racetrack. The jet dryer, of course, is really a jet engine that's, and there it is, in fact. It's a jet engine that they tow around the track, and then it theoretically is going to blow some of the water off, but it sure does make it tough when we've had as much rain as we do here now. Well, now joining us up here in the booth while we wait for the start of this race is Adrian Fernandez. I'm going to shake your hand very carefully because that's the wrist that he broke right there. In fact, you can see a little bit of the scar. Don't twist it too far, like please. That? I don't want to get in trouble for this. You broke that at Detroit, and you broke it. You got your hand caught in the wheel?
Yeah, somehow I got it there, Paul, and we don't understand how it happened, but you know, it just when I tried to save the car, my hand got caught in the steering wheel, and somehow when I hit the wall, the steering wheel just went into my arm and just broke it, and it was a very painful experience.
Well, it was, you know, you think, well, that's just a little break, but the x-rays, which we have, we're going to show you, is a pretty big break.
Exactly. It was a big break, but, you know, Joe Bailey, you know, the team from Terry Trammell, they've done a terrific job, and they make sure, as you can see, they put extra bolts there, so I'm strong, and hopefully I'll be back for Laguna Seca, and that's the aim.
You were trying actually to get back this week, weren't you?
I was trying, and you know, PJ said, you know, take your time. No, I'm going back to Vancouver, but I've been testing my go-kart and all week, and I've been feeling good. Of course, Laguna Seca is very, very demanding, as you know, Parker, and hopefully I'll be ready.
Well, 2 years ago, you and I talked about how much cornering force and how much steering load we had coming down the hill out of turn 9.
Exactly.
It's at the point where you almost have to loosen your shoulder harnesses to get close enough to the wheel to turn it. This has got to be the worst possible injury to your right hand where you're shifting and steering. How are you preparing to get strong enough to drive at Laguna Seca?
Well, as you can see, you know, I have lost some muscle mass in my right arm, and John Ward, my engineer, and Patrick Racing have been working very hard on making the, you know, the caster and everything easier for me to drive, and I'm preparing next week, working more with therapy and everything, and you know, I want to go back so bad that I'm sure I'm going to be ready.
I understand you're go-karting?
Go-karting,
preparation?
Yeah, all week. You know, that's a great training, and I've been practicing a lot. I've been very fast and consistent, so you know, I feel like I'm ready, but you know, the arm needs to be stronger for Laguna Seca, so hopefully we will be able to do a good job there.
And there's PJ Jones, who is replacing you in the car. Before we talk about him, I want to get you and Parker going on this whole issue of blocking, because everybody's talking about it. What is blocking, and how do you officiate it?
First of all, Paul, I don't know if you want to ask an active driver about it. He still has to race with these guys.
Adrian never does it.
No, I never block. I'm a very good guy. I mean, just ask anybody and you'll see.
The problem is it's so subtle at a place like this, isn't it? I mean, you can't pick it up on TV.
Exactly.
Only the drivers know, really.
Exactly.
Right?
And you know the trick how to block people. And you know, like, I mean, to defend a little bit PJ, not because he's my friend and he's my teammate, but you know, in Chicago he's in a lead lap, and you know, if a yellow comes, and you know, he's not like waving all over the place and blocking, and you know, if a yellow comes and he gets his opportunity to, you know, to fight for the 6th place, you know, it's legitimate, and that's what we have the rules. So you know, it's up to the stewards and to us, the driver, to really, you know, fix this thing. Because, I mean, there is no way we're always going to make a rule where always is going to be perfect. There is always going to be a fight and, you know, discussion about the drivers,
So, in a lot of ways, blocking is really in the eyes of the blocker. Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah,
I think so.
Like Mario described it, that was a good way.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we expect them to go green finally in about a half a lap here now. They're going to indicate that 1 lap to go, and Adrian Fernandez, if you'd be so kind as to stay in the booth here with us for a while, and you can keep track of what we're doing as well and run corrections on Parker and I. Jan Bikas.
Well, Naoki Hattori has fired up the engine. In fact, is just leaving pit road. They checked the rear brakes and found no problems. They put him back in. He certainly has lost some time, but he'll get to take the green flag anyway.
Well, they crossed the start-finish line, the conclusion of the 8th lap of the race. And in doing so, they get the signal that the next lap, we're going to go green. And I'll tell you what, I'm not even sure what I'm going to see when it happens. I expect a lot to happen and happen pretty quickly.
Well, we've got several mechanical battles going on here. We have the battle between the tires. Here's Al Unser Jr. on Goodyear tires. The Goodyear rain tire is very, very good. And the Firestone rain tire also very good. Remember, Jill DeFerrin now is currently 7th. Here we see Michael Andretti. He's lost it, trying to get restarted, wants to stay on that lead lap. This is a problem. They're trying to get heat into the tires on this restart. It doesn't take much to turn these cars around. And also we have the engine battle between Toyota, Ford, Mercedes, and Honda. Honda is known to have the best drivability, and in conditions like this is exactly what you want. Keep in mind, Honda's won 11 of the last street and road courses, dating all the way back to 1997, when Mauricio Gugelmin was the only other non-Honda to win here in a Mercedes 2 years ago. So far that drivability has been dominant. The Ford that Adrian's got, I think everybody agrees, it's got the best top end horsepower, it makes great mileage. And the Mercedes, all the drivers are complaining this weekend especially of drivability problems, that it's a light switch. And I think you could see that watching some of these races.
A now furious Michael Andretti. They're going to keep the yellow out full course while they get him out of that position, but you can imagine he's still on the edge of a championship fight. He's running under yellow. Here's what happened to him.
Well,
good.
I think, Paul, here it's a matter of as a driver, you have to be very careful on the puddles, and sometimes you cannot see them as a driver, and you know, it can catch you so quickly that you just have to pay attention to every single puddle that is on the track, and sometimes it's very hard to see them, and maybe that's what exactly happened to Michael right there.
Well, Michael Andretti wants to get going certainly before that field comes around. When you were on board with Richie Hearn, you saw Naoki off to the right, Richie passing him, but that's not a violation pass. That's just him getting back into the position that he needs to be. If they get Michael Andretti fired, they're going to try and do that now, though even here, oh, the field's right there. Michael.
And he let go of the tow rope before he got it restarted. He's just gone a lap down. And Adrian, we've talked now some about the standing water, the puddles, but the other thing that's very obvious here in Vancouver is the amount of paint that's used for the pedestrian lines and also for the parking spaces. In the wet, that's got to be absolutely treacherous.
Oh, that's the worst thing that you can have in a rain condition like this. Anytime you hit a white line like that, it's going to make the car spin, and you know, conditions are very tough. It's the worst condition that any driver can expect, especially if you're in the middle of the grid where visibility is almost none, and you have to be so patient and just concentrate as much as you can.
So you've got the problem with visibility coming off the spray of the cars in front of you. What about what preparations do you make to try to keep your visor from fogging so that at least that's not a problem? I
have tried everything, Parker. Nothing seems to work really like they say, and in these conditions sometimes I try not to put too much. I try to keep my visor closed, but then it starts fogging, and one time I put my glove and tried to clean, and I just made a big mess.
Well, Michael was restarted, is on the track. Gary Gerald, you have a question?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of radio conversations relating to people complaining, drivers complaining about cold temperature, getting no temperature in the tires, and I just wondered if Parker and Adrian could address that fact. What do you do in this situation when you know you're about to go green?
Well, you just have to, I mean, unfortunately, I mean, they're trying to clean the track at the same time and try to clear up some of the puddles. So, you know, if they increase the pace, I mean, you can see Michael at a very low speed lost the car, and you know, it's different circumstances because every racetrack is different. And you know, this is a new track for us where we haven't raced in the rain, particularly here. So it's new experience for everybody, and of course Michael should be very frustrated right now because his one lap down is very, very difficult to recover from this one.
You saw the kart flagman Tim Quintel give the field the indication that they now in fact will start on the next lap, though at the same time they're showing the white flag with the red cross in it, which indicates that there is a vehicle on the course in front of them. And Michael Andretti is apparently going to head for the pits right now. His crew is already over the wall, and Jan's right there.
Yeah, they're just going to put a little bit of fuel in. That only took them, well, it only took about 5 seconds until now. They get it restarted. Michael Andretti, what a crushing blow for him to lose that lap. And the crew down here was just devastated.
Yeah, but in that stall, that's not one that's really going to cost them because the field is moving slow. Someone can get to the back of it before they go green.
It's so easy in these conditions, though. I don't think people at home can understand. You've got 900 horsepower. You've got a throttle range, an RPM range of probably 5,500 to 6,000 RPM, all the way up over 15,000 RPM. The cars are right on the ground. It's very easy for the car to hydroplane, let alone the tires. The whole car can skip, and the cars are just demonic in these sorts of conditions, and they can turn around on you so fast. Probably the pace car has got more grip and better handling at the point than these $1 million race cars do.
So the light's already off on the pace car. They will have to pass after the start-finish line. Track temperature, Gary's got to be 0.
Well, it's way down there, Paul. We're used to track temperatures, in fact, up around 120 plus earlier this weekend. Right now, track temperature from Firestone Engineers, 64 degrees. No wonder drivers are saying they can't get heat in those tires.
The lights are all on the backs of the cars for visibility. Once they get in the spray, here comes Montoya picking up the pace. They have long conversations about where they can and will do that. You look for green finally on lap 10. We are underway as Montoya leads the field, and if you're beyond second, you have virtually no visibility. Here comes the field through. Blundell, who we said is good in the rain, already trying to work his way forward, working on Franchitti. PJ has the back end track. Blundell looking. Roberto Moreno right behind him. Montoya's pulled out just a bit, but not much, as you see them begin now to work offline to go for visibility. DeFerrin in a fight, and DeFerrin comes up and around Moreno.
Paul Tracy down the inside of P.J. Jones. He was looking offline, got it done easily, coming down to the end of the back straightaway.
So P.J. Jones drops back to third. Now Franchitti will work on him. 900 horsepower, incredible speed, and on the wet. Boy, this is when they are at their best.
And here comes Blundell. Right around the outside of Dario Franchitti. We saw this in Portland when his first win came 2 years ago in 1997, and look at him charge. Now looking at the back of P.J. Jones. Great car control and a racing history from England, from Europe, where a lot of his races were in the rain.
So Mark Blundell, the man to watch as he moves forward.
Yeah, they keep thinking.
Whoa, DeFerrin's got a problem. DeFerrin's obviously caught the wall with the right rear. Pulls off course after a good move forward. His day is apparently already done. Yeah, I don't think there's any look at all the bends.
Yeah, you can see that upper wishbone's bent on the right rear, so his day's over, Paul.
So the conclusion now of 2 laps under the green flag. Montoya is still the leader. Blundell is working on P.J. Jones with Paul Tracy sitting in second. The field strings out just a bit. One of the 2 Peyton Coyne's cars gets lost. That's Jourdain Jr. Whoa, 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 whoa. See how much fun it is outside here?
I can see that. Well, you have to drive very, very smooth here. You have to be patient and just be...
Al Unser Jr. against the barrier. He's done already. Left rear on that car. Here's the guy. A string of wins here on this course, and never worse than 5th. And now Al Unser Jr.'s out. Blundell trying to work inside of P.J. Jones, but they're going to go full course yellow once again. The twin flags are out at the starting line. They will show around the track as they are. Almost meaningless to put the course condition flag out. Everybody ought to know by now. It is slick on the streets of Vancouver. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Well, we're back under the second full course caution, 14 laps complete, and it's actually a couple of incidents that have put us under this full course caution. The first enjoined Michel Jourdain Jr.
You can see as he comes over this rise on throttle, just turns the back of the car around. He did the smart thing. He kept his foot in it to keep it off the wall.
And the second involved Al Unser Jr. You see him passing in that point, but then a little later on, Al Unser Jr., who this is the 10th year of the Molson Vancouver. You see on the upper top right there on the screen? That's Al Unser Jr. He's completed every lap that have been raced at this track to that point right there. That's a remarkable accomplishment. Still no idea on what little Al is going to do next year, with Roger Penske changing his team up and putting Greg Moore and Joe DeFerrin on board. There's the stats on Al Unser Jr.
And keep in mind, last year he started 22nd and still finished 5th here. You would think this kind of condition would favor him and his aggressive style in race conditions.
Let's go down pit side. Jan Bikas.
Well, you talk about aggressive style. Gilles de Ferran is a guy we were looking forward to watch driving in the rain. What happened?
Completely lost it, Jan. I mean, I wasn't even trying that hard, and came out of the fountain there. I must have caught a little bit of paint or something like this. I had probably about a quarter throttle on it, and in third gear, and the car just snapped around on me. And I mean, I tried to control the spin, but there was very little I could do. It's very disappointing because I thought we probably had a good car in the wet, and we should have had a good race. You know, it's very disappointing.
Any sort of read on how your Goodyears were performing as opposed to the Firestone rain tires out there up until that point?
It's kind of hard to say, really. I mean, we did half a lap. I passed Moreno. They're going into the back stretch, and you know, we're looking good. I was actually thinking about being conservative right at the beginning there because I wanted to get to the end. Sound a bit silly now, but that's what my plan was.
Well, hope you have better fortune at Laguna. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, continuing in the booth with us, the Ducati driver, Adrian Fernandez, who really didn't want to be here today. Hopes not to be here at all next week at Laguna Seca as his wrist heals after an incident at Detroit. So when you hear a third voice, that will be him. We are ready to go back to the green flag for the second time now. Mauricio Guzman, in that one little spurt that we had, started 10th, is now 8th. Jimmy Vasser ran from 16th up to 12th. And because of the slow starts, the yellow start, and this second yellow, we kind of expect this to become a timed race, counting right now at hour and 27 minutes. Here we go. Green flag once again. We're racing. Blundell is the guy to watch. He's going to close up on P.J. Jones.
Dario Franchitti wide
gets
there.
Wide, way wide. Loses a position doing it. So Moreno jumps around him. And Greg Moore, Al tried to take advantage of it, but couldn't.
You can see Blundell working hard, trying to work offline here behind P.J. Jones. He's obviously got a superior car. He's very confident in his abilities in the rain. He doesn't want to do something rash here. He wants to take his time and make this pass stick, and you can see him go through that huge puddle under braking. Very clean pass, well done by Mark Blundell.
Well, and I think PJ helped that out, taking a very wise course. In fact, I wasn't so sure when he hit that puddle that he wasn't taking a hard look at hydroplane.
Exactly. At this stage of the race, you don't want to take any chances. And if you don't feel comfortable with what you have and all that, you just settle down, just try to get acclimated to the conditions and start feeling more comfortable. And that's when you start attacking if you don't feel the car is right at the time that you're driving it.
Oh, Paul Tracy, right and left all over the course. He knows Blundell's back there, and I'm sure he knows what Blundell can do.
But contrast the styles. We see Paul working the car very, very hard. We haven't seen Mark's car move. Very, very smooth, which is exactly what you need to be in these conditions. However, having said that, we've seen Montoya crossed up sideways all year long, and he seems to be able to get the most out of his car driving with that sort of style. So Dario Franchitti, Montoya, opposite styles. Paul Tracy, Mark Blundell, opposite styles. All of them pushing hard to try to lead this race.
Looking back from Montoya, the lead is only 2.8 seconds, but again on a tight street circuit, that's an enormous lead as he goes into 6, makes the right-hander there.
The smallest of mistakes, though, in these conditions are greatly exaggerated, and that lead could evaporate very, very quickly.
Michel Jourdain Jr. again, this time damage to the right front. It's going to put him in a very precarious position. Here's how he got here, Parker.
Well, we saw him keep it off the wall and then put it back into the wall last time. Same thing. He turns in, the back end snaps around on him. He makes contact with the outside tires. Doesn't look like he has any damage, though. It looks like a very light impact, and that's why those tires are so good in those places.
Looked at first like the right front might have been towed in a bit, but then when we saw the car running, it looked pretty good. By the way, back in the series, driving Dan Gurney's Eagle, Montermini started 25th, is now 17th with his tremendous road racing experience. You would, in fact, expect that.
We saw that this morning in the morning warm-up. He was very, very quick. That Eagle on Goodyear's tires working very well. And I would expect him to continue to move up in these conditions.
Paul Tracy still in second, followed by Blundell, Jones, Moreno, and Moore.
Remember also that the conditions are going to keep changing through the race, and that's one of the harder things to do as a driver, or the things that you have to pay attention more through the race. If it stops raining, you know, you will be able to start braking a little bit later. You start putting the power a little bit earlier, things like that. And that's where you have to keep focused 100%. And this is where really requires a lot of concentration from the drivers. And sometimes your car is not working as good in the rain. And that may be the case with PJ. But eventually the conditions may change where his car is going to be able to work better, and then he will be able to attack.
And I've always thought driving in the rain's fine, driving in the dry is okay, but a drying track is the most difficult, as you said, because every lap you can pick up second after second trying to figure out how deep you can go, how hard you can push the car.
That's Montermini. He ran off the end. He's trying to get it turned around so he can get back out of there. One of two eagles. Robbie Gordon also has an eagle. Now, when we look up at Montoya, we'll get a glimpse again, I'm sure, very quickly here, of Paul Tracy.
Just settle into a pace. You're faster than everybody right now, so just settle in. Get a nice pace.
Chip Ganassi talking to Juan Montoya. On Paul Tracy's car, you will notice that there is an onboard camera mount on the rollover bar. There's no camera in there. Not feeding anybody. What's the story there, Parker?
Well, they say so they can identify Paul's car versus Dario's car, but I think, Paul, you think that something else is going on there. You're just not telling us.
I notice it's taller than the other onboard camera mounts, and I know getting air clean to the rear wing might be an issue, but beyond that, I'm just an announcer guy. You're supposed to know that stuff.
Well, as we watch this battle, Montoya continues to turn laps nearly a full second quicker than the rest of the field. But every lap now, as we talked about, Adrian, all the cars are going quicker as the track is slowly drying.
Yeah, that's right. That's, Montoya's doing a great job there. I mean, you can see that Robbie Gordon.
Robbie takes the eagle way off to the left. And now Castro Neves has been moving up, as we mentioned. Now he's working on Mimo Gidley. Now, Castro Neves has been an interesting story. Currently runs at 17. He started way in the back in 26th place. He had a big controversy during the second day of qualifying where they tried to take out a car that had already been withdrawn. They'd had terrible engine problems. In fact, in 3 days of running this week, 1 day of test and 2 on this track, had 7 different engines go away. And they were hoping that they could run a car that they felt was in better shape. Officials said, no, the rules say that you have to stay with the car because you've withdrawn the other. And so he had to start well back. Now he's steadily moving forward. And as I suggested, on a wet course this morning, a damp course, not wet like this one, he was 6th quick. So we expect that Helio Castroneves may, in fact, move forward fairly quickly. Carpentier did, in fact, get past Gugelman for 8 places. Now we look at the rundown, and we'll be back right after this. You're looking down on the first turn. That's Luis Garcia Jr. He just spun the 21 car out of Hogan Racing. Finally got it going once again. And that whoops, that came from Adrian Fernandez.
I thought he was going to hit the truck there.
You didn't think about the overpass in the view down. Here's how he got in trouble. It was alongside Michel Jourdain.
And you can see Michel's looking down the inside. Luis thought that he had the corner. He turned down and put him back into the tires.
Here's something that's going to make a world of difference. Greg Moore, who was running 6th, and there is the car sitting over against the tires with no sign of an ability to get it going. But how did he get there?
He's down at the end of the long straightaway. You can see him hit that puddle on the way in. Hydroplaned at the right side of the tires. Still trying to get control of the car. You can see that right front's locked up. No chance of making the corner. And he just nudges the tire. I'm sure there's probably no damage at all. If they can get him back and restarted, he'll be back in this thing. And keep in mind, he lives not far from here in Maple Ridge, British Columbia. Local hometown favorite.
Okay, they're going to try and bump you.
Talking to Greg Moore. Our coverage today comes from CBC Canada. And this is the fight as Moreno goes across the wet, tries to get PJ.
And you see the problem there is he's trying to pull down the inside to make the pass, but he's got to go into deeper water to do it. It's going to be nearly impossible for him to get that done. Oh, you can see Dario all over the back of Moreno coming through that back complex. We mentioned the overpasses. It's unique to this circuit. It trips water down onto a dry track or leaves dry sections underneath a wet track. It's very, very treacherous for the drivers.
Well, they're trying to get Greg going once again, Jan.
Yes, and he has spoken to his crew and said simply he couldn't get the car stopped, says there's no damage. If he can get restarted, he can get back up to speed.
Yeah, that's certainly the way it looks. And when we go back to the battle with P.J. Jones and Roberto Moreno, Dario Franchitti. You'll notice another blue and white Forsyth car there. That's Franchitti, who is simply, or excuse me, that's Carpentier, who has taken over the position previously occupied by Moore. But this battle is tight.
Very, very difficult in these changing track conditions. Oh, PJ's wide there. He's going to open the door for them to get a run on him going down this long back straightaway now. But how do you pass if you have to pull out in the water to do it? PJ's, you can see PJ moving a little bit to the inside. Keep in mind, that may not be PJ as much as just the roughness of this course. Moreno looking down through the water.
Same place he tried it before. Didn't work this time either. And once again, it gave a little opening to Franchitti.
Franchitti getting a better exit off the corner now, looking down the inside of Moreno. You can see Moreno looking down the inside there to protect his line. That's some of the blocking issues we talked about earlier. Sometimes we can see them, sometimes they're very subtle, and only the drivers know. But even if you have a small advantage, if you can't take use of that advantage, how do you get past without taking a huge risk? That's the question. That's the problem.
P.J. Jones, the front of this group, currently occupies third, Jan.
Yes, and I said at the opening of the show that he wasn't real happy with his car in the rain. One of the reasons is he's new to the Reynard chassis, having spent most of the year in the Swift. And he just got comfortable with a dry setup, and he's never run a Reynard in the rain. So he's never had the opportunity.
Jan, even as you talk, PJ runs it off the first turn. He's going to have to turn it around. Didn't touch anything, but in doing so, of course, relinquishes his position. And Moreno, and in fact, most of the field now is going to get past him. Too bad, Adrian.
Yeah, it's too bad. He was running very well, and he's done a tremendous job all weekend there with qualifying and practice. Hopefully he can get back quickly and get back into the run.
As we watch this replay, watch his left side wheels. He gets out in the water here. Right there, you can see the rooster tails come off. He misses the turn in, and it's just like hitting ice. There's no way you can get that car turned in. And Adrian, you've got to make that split-second decision. If you turn, you're most likely in the tires. It's better to go down the escape road.
Exactly. In those situations, you better go straight and try to get back into the race. That's what I'm talking about here. You just have to keep focused, and it's very easy to make mistakes because conditions are not allowing you to make these kind of mistakes. If you miss your braking point or you're turning by a little bit, you're going to miss the corner, and that's why you have to keep very, very focused in the conditions and the changing conditions through the whole race.
Well, he comes out to add a Mexican beer to some salsa.
Exactly.
And gets back into the fight. Sounds good to me at this point. Montoya leads it, followed by Tracy, Blundell, Moreno, and Dario Franchitti.
And Paul Montoya just turned the fastest lap of the race at a 1:15.9. Paul Tracy right behind him at a 1:16 flat. To give you an idea, the next quickest car is Roberto Moreno now, who just went down to a 15.2. Everybody else back in the 17s, 18s, and 19s.
And I'm looking at this, you'd say, oh, that's not so quick. They're averaging 84 miles an hour around this thing, and that, in fact, is quick. But here now comes the challenge that Montoya is going to begin to face throughout the day as he comes up behind P.J. Jones. And now this puts us in memory of Chicago 2 weeks ago. And what is blocking? What isn't? How fast do you have to be? The drivers have been warned that if you are experiencing the leaders coming up behind you to lap you, and it appears that you're blocking, then they're going to give you a furled blue with a orange diagonal and black flag at the line. If, in fact, you come around again in front of the leader, you're going to get the black flag. It will not be an issue here as Montoya got around P.J. Jones. Gary?
Already, Chip Ganassi, just prior to the pass that was executed by Montoya, was already pleading the case with the cart official. It's become such a sensitive issue. As soon as somebody tucks in behind somebody who's not on that battling for the lead lap, the plea goes out to the officials to be closely watching that scenario.
So Montoya in front. Now it's Paul Tracy that's going to have a moment or two to figure out if he can get around P.J. Jones. Adrian Fernandez, thanks for joining us here today, and we hope to see you in the race car next week. We'll be back with more from the Molson Indy Vancouver after this. Saturday, ABC's college football goes prime time with ACC action. Number 11, Georgia Tech takes on Peter Warwick. And the number 1 team in the nation, the Florida State Seminoles. And also, you're going to have to check your local listings because college football with number 15, UCLA, meeting number 9, Ohio State, as Michael Wiley tries to get the Buckeyes back on track. That's all next Saturday on ABC Sports. Now, while we were away, Roberto Moreno, battling with Mark Blundell, was able to get past.
And Moreno is hooked up. On that lap, he turned the race's fastest lap at a 1:15.5, quicker than Montoya by 3/10 now. He is flying.
That puts Moreno in third, behind Montoya and Tracy. Franchitti is just behind Moreno, but we've had some reports that Franchitti may in fact be suffering some tire problems because, Parker, the track is beginning to dry. And remember, in some places of the track, there's an expressway that runs over it, so as long as they're not carrying a lot of water on their tires into it, it's going to be dry there too.
And the rain tires are very, very soft because of the low grip conditions, and they don't generate in wet conditions very much heat.
Slot 5, please.
In these drying conditions, they start to chunk. You'll see the savvy drivers looking for puddles of water going down the straightaways to try to run the cars through those puddles to try to keep those tires cool.
Al Unser Jr. is one of 3 cars reported out, along with Phil DeFerrin and Naoki Hattori. He's driven every lap at this track right up until that moment, Jan.
Yes, and we couldn't quite see from the replays what happened. Al, what put you out?
Well, the Hurdes car spun, and then everybody got scattered there. I tried to pass Richie Hearn on the outside, couldn't get it done, and then I tried to get underneath him to come off, and then whoever was behind us hit me from behind and spun me around. So it was a sad day. You know, we were just getting going, and I really felt Goodyear has a tire, especially for these conditions right now, and it's a shame that none of us are out there running.
A lot of speculation about your future. Will you be back here in Vancouver next year?
I don't know. You know, we're still trying to get Roger his 100. So.
Thank you, Al.
For Al Unser Jr., that's his 6th DNF of the season. Paul Tracy second, 3.5 seconds behind Montoya. So he's not actually given up that much to Montoya. There's Roberto Moreno. He runs in third. And sitting back in fourth is Dario Franchitti.
And these top 4 cars are trading fastest laps. Dario now set the race's quickest lap at a 1:15.1.
You see Mark Blundell there. He is 5th with Patrick Carpentier just behind him. What's the word from his pits, Gary?
Well, we were just checking about whether they went with a dry or a wet setup. It favored the dry. That was good because he was making great progress, but the concern is that rear tire concern. And now they're telling him, and they're also telling Patrick Carpentier, who is right behind Blundell, get into any water you can at any spot because those rear tires are getting very hot, and it is losing some of its effectiveness here when they're on those dry strips.
Well, if they've told them that, I haven't seen either of them respond to that just yet.
Well, actually, I've seen Mark Blundell now in a couple of the straightaways pull down the inside offline. Even there, you can see him trying to run those tires through the water. It's usually very subtle, but remember at Portland 2 years ago at Mark's first victory, in these similar kinds of conditions, he was actually running down the far side.
Oh, Carpentier tries to get down inside. In fact, he's holding on down there, but Blundell, with an even greater move, holds on the outside, but Carpentier finally dominates it.
That was some great driving, wheel to wheel, Mark in the rain, Carpentier on the dry and on the inside.
Okay, just keep moving. Another few laps we're going to be pitting, so it'll be all right. Just keep working with it.
There was a lot of trust between those 2 drivers there, Paul.
Well, that was the radio from the Pac West pits out to Mark Blundell, anticipating getting that car corrected pretty quickly here. There he had the chance to run right through the water.
And there you can see Mark.
Yep, there he takes it.
Running down the inside there now. He'll come back out in the braking area in the dry, turn in, and as he comes off this next corner, we'll see him do the same thing onto the short straightaway. Watch him dodge to the right side there.
33 laps completed, 57 to go. An hour and 5 minutes to go if they go to a timed race. Now, we mentioned that Paul Tracy was 3.5 back. Not anymore. He's sitting right on the rear wing of Montoya.
He's been catching him about 1 second to 1.5 seconds a lap. That means Montoya's tires. Remember, Montoya doesn't have a lot of experience with these American Champ Car race tires in the rain. Paul Tracy does. I would imagine Montoya's tires are just about gone. Paul's gauged the use of his tires perfectly, and look at him haul Montoya in.
But on the other hand, Montoya, who is almost always the quickest car on fresh, cold tires out of the pits, maybe that doesn't affect him all that much. Obviously, it affects him some, or we wouldn't have this closure.
Okay, Tracy's P2.
Look down from the Honda Helicam.
You can see Montoya running down the right side to try to keep those tires cool down. The problem is once you get to the braking area, it doesn't dry the tire in time to get effective braking and initial turn-in. Paul elected to stay on the dry line. You could see how he closed in going through that complex.
And then down from the Honda Helicam, this is the battle for the lead. Tracy in second place.
It's 155 mile an hour, 3G corner there, blind to the drivers on the exit. 190 miles an hour on the brakes, 3 Gs of braking. Down to second gear from sixth.
Well, Jan Beekes, Paul Tracy's looking pretty solid at this point. What's the report from the pits?
Well, he is looking solid, and that would tend to let us look back to what we said at the beginning of the race, that he is more on a dry setup, and we know that Juan Montoya is more on a wet. And as the track dries, it's playing more and more into Paul Tracy's hands.
Oh, here's going to be a factor. Plenty of cars lined up in front of him now.
They've got Greg Moore, Robbie Gordon, and Jan Magnussen just in front of them.
Montoya runs down on the wet side. I assume trying to keep him cool. Still traffic is the issue.
Tracy obviously much quicker at this stage of the race, just trying to find an opportunity. He doesn't want to rush this. He doesn't want to take the chance of damaging his car. He's obviously quicker. He's got a number of laps to get this done before that first pit stop.
They're actually currently coming up on a group that's running 19th, 18th, 17th, just ahead of them. Magnussen, Gordon, Moore, who's right in front of the battle right now, is a lap behind the race. Tracy's going to try it again, comes to the inside. You hear as Chip Ganassi tells Montoya that he's there, and we have a change in the lead. We'll have it officially as soon as they get across the line. Paul Tracy has taken over from Juan Montoya. Now Greg Moore, the two Canadians, sitting right there. Moore sees Tracy.
Great move by Paul. He set him up perfectly. The timing was excellent under braking. Very clean move. He's got to be very careful here, picking his way through this traffic.
Well, very good. Got to make sure Magnussen sees him. He does. Gives him room. Pulls well offline. Nice move. And drops right back in. Oh, no! Tracy loses it.
Oh, he just bumps the wall. He stayed on the throttle there.
Dangerous spot. Did he kill it? No. Here we go. He selects up reverse.
He's still okay. He and Montoya had pulled out such a big advantage over Moreno. There's Moreno's in the back picture there.
Get back. We've got a long ways to go.
His wife, Lisa, watches on.
He's certainly not out of this by any means.
Moreno got him as well. So Moreno comes into second place. Herta gets sideways. And Michael comes by. Herta was running in 8th place.
Now there's a big rise, as you can see, and as you come over that rise, the back end naturally steps out. He's on the throttle. Paul snaps the throttle on hard here, just bumps the wall, keeps it running. He's really got to get back into the mental game here. Stay focused. There's no reason why he can't come back and win this race.
This is a pretty nifty piece of driving there.
Yeah, I mean, you're so on the edge at all times, and the slightest mistake on a street course is so costly. On a road course, he could have gotten away with that without any problem, but you're surrounded by concrete, and he did a very good job. Moreno slipped by him now, but he's the fastest guy on the racetrack with Moreno. They can easily work right back up to the back of Montoya. Keep in mind, Montoya's got to get past Greg Moore, and now Max Pappas in front of him.
Well, now we expect Tracy into the pit shortly. He stayed out. He stayed out, so Tracy is going to try to work Moreno around one more lap, but we expect pit stops to start shortly. You see, Max Pappas may have an engine issue as well. We saw a couple of puffs of smoke off the back of his car that may indicate he has a problem in the engine compartment here at the Molson Indy Vancouver. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. We're back at the Molson Indy Vancouver. Paul Page with Parker Johnstone, Jan Beekes, and Gary Gerould in the pits. Just as we left you, because of the Herta spin, they went to a full course caution, slowed the field down, put them behind the pace car. That immediately brought the leaders of the race in. Montoya came screaming in first. Now look there, they put new rain tires on. Now, Chip Ganassi warned Montoya, be careful on these tires because they've only been lightly scrubbed.
And what they do in the morning warm-up is they scrub rain tires and dry tires, but they didn't really get that chance this morning. Paul Tracy's crew at work.
Now look at the right front here on Tracy's stop.
You can see the sticker there. This is one of the fastest pit crews in the business. Great stop from Team Green here.
And Franchitti stopped at the same time. There's one of those rain tires. Jan, what's the story?
Yes, this is Paul Tracy's tire, and you can see that the crew immediately came over to check it out. And I can tell you it's pretty warm. They're getting tire temperature, but the really good thing is it's not starting to chunk. He has a lot of good grip here, unlike what we saw from Montoya when he was having trouble, because if this tire wasn't good, it would start to come apart. Gary?
And exactly the same scenario for Juan Montoya. No chunking off the Firestones that came off the rear. But we talked to one of the Firestone engineers, and he says this is a very critical time. And with no further moisture coming down, it's very conceivable that, say, in the next 10 laps or so, they'll have to be back in to go to the slick tires. And so this crew may be tested very shortly. Also, one other note for Montoya, they did put in a turn and a half of front wing as he exited.
So the stop's complete for everyone, with Montoya now running the lead under the full course caution. Paul Tracy is right behind him. There are the ins and outs, costly for Roberto Moreno, perhaps most of all. We'll be right back. Our Toyota Spotlight takes a look at Dario Franchitti and his success on street circuits. A year ago here at Vancouver, he took the win, and along with that win, $440,000. It was a big day. This year, he took the win, of course, at Toronto. Paul Tracy coming right in behind him. And then they did exactly the same thing again at Detroit, with Franchitti taking the win. So on temporaries, he's strong. Today, he's sitting down in third place now in the lineup, as we're going to show you the full field. And I want to tell you, when we look at that Richie Hearn, Michel Jourdain, Jan Magnussen, P.J. Jones, and Michael Andretti, none of those have pitted for fuel on that cycle. Michael, of course, was in early, and there's a lot of tactics being played. Now, Jan Beekes, why haven't those guys stopped?
Well, for that whole group, Paul, what they're thinking is that pretty soon you're going to have to go to dry tires. So rather than make 2 pit stops, they are going to stay out there and wait until the track dries, and then just make the one stop to come in and get fuel and dry tires. Now, what they're hoping, maybe they can even do that under yellow. Gary?
Max Pappas out of the car, damage to the rear of it. You were involved with contact. Was it your teammate, do you know, Brian Herta?
I'm not so sure. You know, I know was doing my race, you know, getting a break at the end of the straight, and someone ran into my back. Unfortunately, because we were aiming for getting in the top 5 for the point in the championship, and it's a bit sad.
How close are you to going to the dry tire, the slick tire, as opposed to the rains when this round of pit stops occurred?
No, we're really far. The track is very, very slippery still. You know, it's really damp. I think it's going to take at least another 30 laps.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you.
42 laps are now complete, 90 are scheduled, but when you look at the 2-hour time limit, they're counting at 50 minutes and 23 seconds right now. We'll be back, and when we do, we'll see green. Cars of the Kart FedEx Championship Series race in 1 week at Laguna Seca on ESPN. Next time you'll see them here on ABC is on the 26th of September. Live coverage of the Texaco Grand Prix of Houston. And I can almost guarantee you that the current battle in the points fight is probably going to continue at least to that race, if not beyond. While we were away, Robbie Gordon got himself in trouble into the tire barrier, climbed out of his Eagle, told it what he thought of it, and then just decided to climb up on the tires and walk away. So Robbie Gordon is out of this race here. Now, Roberto Moreno, you saw, dropped a few positions on the pit stop. Why was that, Jan?
Well, it was a very similar situation that we saw for Michael Andretti in Portland. When he tried to leave the pits, the engine actually shut off, and it's an ECU-related problem, engine control unit, and basically Roberto has to reach up and recycle the ignition to get it going again. Now, I just found out some news going by the Greg Moore pit is that they are discussing on the radio. They are thinking before we go green, he might take a risk, come onto pit road, and take on dry tires. They haven't made that decision. That would be a huge gamble.
Well, he's a lap down, so I guess that gamble is in fact worth it. Currently sitting in 20th. You saw Robbie Gordon certainly took that risk because those are slick tires on that car. Gary Gerald?
We talked earlier about the progress being made by Mark Blundell. He has slipped back after this first round of pit stops. We just checked with John Anderson, and John Anderson is a little irate right now. He contends that his driver, Blundell, got passed by 2 men under yellow, and yet CART officials down here that he was talking to say the observers in those corners did not see that. Anderson maintains they lost a couple of spots from it, and so Mark Blundell has slipped back. And Paul, you've got the scoring monitor. I think he's back in 13th position.
Yeah, currently Blundell in 13th, and while we're talking about people going down, what about someone who came up? Mimo Gidley started 20th and was in 8th place before they came out on the caution. He has dropped 4 positions to 12th during this full course yellow after 44 laps, 23 of which have been run under the green. There's the way it looks.
And the other great drives, Paul. Jimmy Vasser started 16th. He's in 9th place. Cristiano D'Amata behind him in 17th at the start is now up to 10th. And Elio Castroneves in 26th spot on the start has moved all the way up to 11th. And they are on the standard pit strategy. Great drives by all these drivers.
We promised you that this would in fact be interesting, and it has been thus far. Counting with 44 minutes, 44 seconds till the end of the 2 hours. 44 laps are complete of the 90 scheduled, so it will be an official race on lap count in another 1 lap. They're waiting for Greg Moore. Remember, he is supposedly going to come in, take some chances here, go over to the slick tires. They have them set out, and Greg Moore's on his way in. Jan?
So we're going to see the first person that's going to be brave enough to venture out here on slick tires.
Watch the pits, position 4 on fuel, 4 on fuel.
Steve Chow is talking to him on the radio. They're not in any huge hurry here. Just want to get the tires on. Now remember,
really watch it leaving the pits here. It's real wet.
These are slick tires with no heat. So when he leaves, it's going to be like driving on ice.
And remember, Jan, Max Pappas just said moments ago he thought they were a long way from being able to go to slicks on this surface.
Oh, and P.J. Jones just drove by on slick tires as well. 13 seconds for Greg Moore, so we got 2 brave guys out there on slicks now.
And we were able to watch P.J. Jones come in while you were describing Greg Moore. CBC giving us the coverage here today and keeping on top, especially of a guy like Greg Moore. This is his local track, and he deserves that kind of coverage. But P.J. Jones, who has been a factor in this race, certainly in the early going, went in and took that move over to slick tires as well. There's P.J.
And you can see P.J. and Greg creeping. Keep in mind how difficult a time the drivers were having trying to control these cars on rains. On slicks, it's nearly impossible. I did a test with Emerson Fittipaldi once in similar conditions. You were almost at walking speed, and neither one of us could control the cars. I think Greg and PJ are going to face the same results that Robbie Gordon did. I don't think it's dry enough yet to go to those slicks. They're going, if they do keep control
of the car. Said anything. We have no CART communication. Okay, it's going to go green. It's going to go green this time. It'll be green this time. It will be green. Go +3 on fuel.
Montoya, then Tracy, then Franchitti, and Moreno. Carpentier has been very careful during this full course caution to run through puddles whenever possible. Keep his tires cool down.
Green.
Back racing once again. Montoya takes the field through. See a couple of the slower cars running in there as well, like Andretti and Hearn running up with the leaders. Well, Hearn's actually up there. He's running in 6th place right now. And as they went to green, Luis Garcia Jr. headed for the pits. Report from the course corner workers, most of them volunteers here, that P.J. Jones touched the wall.
That's what we talked about earlier before we went green. Both he and Greg Moore will have to drive at a snail's pace until this track comes back to them.
Whoa, 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 look at this.
Dario Franchitti All crossed up coming off of there.
Franchitti tried to make a move on Paul Tracy, lets him know that he's there again. And least we forget, though these two theoretically have an agreement now, they have in fact been in contact on more than 2 occasions when trying to race one another on the circuit. Roberto Marino now joins that fight.
You can see the difference in lines going through that turn 1, 2, 3 complex between Tracy and Franchitti.
Michael Andretti is in there behind Moreno, but remember, Michael had his problems earlier. Whoa, Scott Pruitt loses it, tries to save it, just barely touches the wall, and he might have touched Montermini when he did it as well. Michael Andretti is 18th. He's a lap behind, we were about to say.
Scott Pruitt was running up in 16th position. We'll have a look at it, see if we can see what happened. The same set of circumstances we saw earlier. Montermini not quite all the way up the inside. Scott coming down to protect his line. Stands on the throttle to get that Pioneer Electronics car turned around.
Back to the battle for second. Tracy, Franchitti, and from time to time Moreno. Montoya, you see him there. He's 1.6 seconds ahead. That's what 1.6 looks like. Down the pit straight.
Montoya's got to be very careful at this stage, Paul. We can see the track is dry in places. He will chunk these rain tires. They will overheat and literally disintegrate and come apart if he's not careful.
As they came back to green, Mark Blundell lost 2 positions just in that first lap back to green. Tony Kanaan and Jan Magnussen both got past him. So Mark Blundell, who started out so very strong, now is 15th. Helio Castro Neves, we mentioned him at the start. Well, let's take a look. Franchitti tries it. Paul gave him a little room on the exit, but he still can't do it. Helio Castro Neves started 26th, is now 11th.
On that last lap, Montoya now down into the 113 second bracket range. He's 1.1 seconds quicker than Tracy and Franchitti.
Cristiano D'Amata started 17th. He's now 10th. Jan Bigas.
Barry Green on the radio to Paul Tracy doing a bit of cheerleading. Says, come on, Paul. If you can't catch up to Montoya, let Dario go. So he's trying to get Paul Tracy up to speed. Wants him to close the gap on the leaders.
Montoya comes through. Oh, look at Tracy use that curve.
What we're going to see is Dario wants as good an exit as possible off this corner to get a run on Paul going down this long straightaway. Try to set him up for a pass on the inside. If he can't get that done, he's going to try to exit turn 6 like he's made his passes in the past. See Dario sideways at 160 miles an hour there. Now he's not close enough to get it done here, or is he?
Well, no. Certainly oh, and he may lose. No, he saves it.
What the fuck is going on?
No, we apologize for that.
Dario obviously thought Paul was going to breathe the throttle a little bit and let him down the inside. He took a big risk going in deep there offline. Dario's got to be very careful here. He's got to keep his focus, get back up behind Paul. And Paul's very good coming off of that turn 3-4 section. Oh, wow, that was close. P.J. Jones.
P.J. loses it as they come behind. Whoa! P.J., that was Michael coming up on him.
It looks like he's got damage to the rear wing there, Paul.
Now Franchitti tries to make the move to the inside. And in fact, he gets the position.
Now watch Dario take off from this stage on. He is obviously quicker. Let's watch a replay. Paul gets into the back of PJ. PJ's a little late on the turn-in for the left-hander into the chicane. Clouts the wall there into the tires. Moreno makes it through, but look at Michael. Oh, man, he just gets around the outside of him there.
And PJ's able to continue on as well. Oh, Montoya in all of this pulls 6.7 seconds ahead of that battle for second place, with Franchitti now in second, and Tony Kanaan was able to get around Mimo Gidley for 12th. Gidley's having a pretty nice weekend here. Driving for the Peyton Cloyne operation. Pits are reporting that P.J. Jones will in fact be into the pits shortly. Montoya is the leader, pulling away once again. Now followed by Franchitti. Then this man, Paul Tracy. Roberto Moreno is just behind Tracy, and Carpentier is in 5th place on the course, followed by Richie Hearn. There's the rundown for you after 50 laps. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC station. Welcome back to the Molson Indy Vancouver. Montoya is the leader. Franchitti, and then we're showing Moreno in there. And part of that is that there have been a couple of incidents that have affected several of the cars. Roberto Moreno comes into the pits. Look at the steam coming off of the cars off, but that's obviously a much longer stop than one would anticipate. This is Paul Tracy going to come up, and there he is. Now watch this. Catches the wall, just barely brushes it, trying to chase Moreno. And then P.J. Jones came into the pits, and he climbed out of the car after a few seconds, Jan.
Yes, and after a great ride at the beginning of the race, unfortunately it's over for PJ. Now looking back, you think going to slicks was a mistake?
Yeah, it was bad to worse. You know, we just didn't have a very good car in the rain, and I got in a little deep down there and had to go and run off. We got in the back and got locked down, and we were having a hard time, and so we said, let's go to dries and take a gamble. And I had to stay on the dry line, and Paul was trying to get by me, and, you know, it was just one of those deals. It wasn't his fault. It was just, you know, I was going so slow because we were on dry tires, and I couldn't get off the dry line. And I feel bad for him. You know, Takati, Quaker State team did a great job. We'll get him next week.
Well, he says dry tires are not the idea. We're hearing some guys might try it. Thank you.
Richie Hearn into the pits. He was running as high as 10th and having a good run. Remember, he's one of those that had not stopped. This is on the 54th lap. His last pit stop was on the 7th.
Hey, Richie, you're doing real good here, buddy. You're going to have to keep your cool and keep it on the black for the first few laps. Do the best you can.
John Della Pena, his car owner, talking to him. Now, what's Montoya going to do, Gary Gerald?
The slicks have been moved to the wall.
Oh, no, that's interesting. Yeah, very big problem.
Greg Moore hard up against the wall on the outside.
Yeah,
they've got to be very careful because as the drivers come around, they'll see his car. They may not scan the piece of the front wing picked up on the outside. You can see he got out in the water. The car just understeered, just pushed right onto the wall. Big contact. The nose cone sliding back onto the racing line there.
And with a lot of pieces out there, look at it grind away the plate on the bottom and throw sparks. As, with the car sitting where it is, they go to the full course caution. You see the corner workers giving it, and you see the sense of dejection within the crew. Montoya continues as the leader as Greg Moore climbs out and away. Franchitti followed by Tracy. I think we demonstrated Moreno as being in 3rd place, but we did that just as he headed into the pits. So with that stop, Franchitti, Tracy now run 2nd and 3rd.
And that was a tough break for Richie Hearn because he was up to 6th place. He pitted just before that yellow. Now we watch Greg again. You can see once you're offline just a little bit, and keep in mind, he and PJ had come in for those slicks. We talked about it. It's an impossible situation with this combination of dry and wet. You get a little bit offline, and that's all it takes on these temporary street courses.
4th DNF this year for Moore, Jan.
Yes, and we certainly documented the fact that he and PJ were on those slick tires, and we just heard PJ say it wasn't the way to go. And right behind us, his teammate, Jan Magnussen, made a pit stop, and what they do, they put on slick tires. So we've got a few guys out there still taking chances, and it certainly seems from the Greg Moore wreck and from what we heard from P.J. Jones, that is not the way to go right now.
Let's go a little further down the pits. What's Montoya thinking about now, Gary Gerald?
Yeah, we were starting to detail that, Paul, when Greg Moore had his problem and got into the wall so hard. The slick tires had been moved up to the wall for Montoya. They were anticipating about 5 laps. He might make a change, but Montoya has radioed in under the yellow to Chip Ganassi, saying that he thinks his rear tires are junk. You know, he's got the rain tires on. Now, I say junk, that's a driver term in this situation where he's looking for moisture out there. But will they, in fact, make the change? Because now they've added another set of rain tires up on the wall. And I think right now what we're hearing is that Montoya does not think he would be comfortable on slicks at this juncture.
So while several came in, Montoya stays out. So do the Cool Team green cars. And here is Greg Moore. A long walk back. Going to receive the applause of his crowds here, though, because this is really his hometown race. Michael Andretti, we anticipate him in shortly. Mark Blundell is already in. Fellow who started out so well and looked so good, now 13th as he came into the pits under the full course caution. Also in is Michel Jourdain Jr. Michael stayed out. We're still under the full course. Montoya, Franchitti, Tracy, Carpentier, Mauricio Guzman now up to 5th, followed by Jimmy Vasser. We'll be back right after this. Next Friday on ESPN, it'll be the NASCAR Busch Series Autolite Platinum 250 from Richmond International Raceway in Richmond, Virginia. Defending Busch Series champion Dale Earnhardt Jr. won last year as Autolite Platinum 250. See if he can do it once again. Well, the question is what to do. Which tire do I want? There's a lot of interesting combinations that people are talking about. Some out on wet, some out on dry, and maybe even a discussion of both, Parker.
We see Cristiano D'Amata hunting for wet down the left side of the track there, the right side of your screen. You know, it's so difficult. This track could dry so quickly, and the slicks will be worth 5-10 seconds a lap, but the slightest sprinkle and you're right back to wets again. They're trying to extend the fuel mileage to try to get to the end. You don't want to take a chance of making a pit stop. This is the most difficult decision you can make because it can be the whole race.
Well, Gary, we're looking at a shot of what looks to be a dry front and a wet rear in the Target Chip Ganassi pits. What are they thinking?
Well, they've got both slicks and reins on the wall, and maybe I can add to that in a moment, because a moment ago there was a radio conversation, Montoya saying this track is too dry for the rain tires. Now, Mark Blundell did come in. He went to the slicks. And as we look off over BC Place, the Plaza des Nations on the perimeter of this course, big holes of blue sky. And clearly things are drying very rapidly now. And don't forget, we're in the timed race mode. We're down, what, Paul, 22 minutes or thereabouts to go?
Right at 24 right now, though they haven't officially announced that yet. I mean, it's a given fact that's the way it's going to go.
Well, I would think that if you're at the front, you might be a little conservative. If you're trying to get to the front, you'd go to slicks. You might be a little off the pace for a few laps here, but as Gary said, with blue sky to the west, in just a short amount of time, you could be significantly faster than anybody else on the track. And I mean 5 to 10 seconds a lap if this track completely dries out. So, well, I'm not sure what you would do. I would tend to go to slicks, Paul.
Well, now, from the officials comes word that Mark Blundell and Michel Jourdain Jr. are going to be brought in for stop-and-go penalties or drive-through penalties for coming into a closed pit.
Well, you've got me. They've got a big sign. The pits know it. Whoever the team manager or the person directing the driver tells them to come in when the pits are open. So I'm not quite sure how that would happen.
Well, let's go to Jan.
Well, we're talking about guys on dry tires. We also mentioned, or already mentioned, Jan Magnussen. We saw that Michael Andretti came in and got dry tires, as well as Michel Jourdain. So quite a few guys now taking that gamble.
Green, green, green.
Well, Chip Ganassi calls the flag for us. We're back racing once again as the top three get in contact. Franchitti and Tracy lining up behind Juan Montoya. Oh! Franchitti backs her into the tires, bends the rear wing.
Franchitti is out.
That's Kim Green talking to Dario Franchitti.
So Franchitti loses it in second place. Gives a little look at the wing. The wing kind of flops back into place. He's got to come in with it, of course.
Paulie's in the wet on the inside. He's trying to make a move that he doesn't have. He's obviously got a good car underneath him. Maybe he felt that if he didn't get it done on the restart, he wasn't going to get it done at all. Remember, Paul Tracy in this very same corner last year had a problem with contact. Fortunately, he avoided Montoya, but it was close.
I'm going to guess on this. From that, it looked like he's got some serious problems there. It looked like Blundell's got problems off into the wall.
The same place.
Yeah, this might bring out a full course. Oh, no! Tracy! In a single lap. In a single lap, this has all happened. Second place is gone. Third place is gone. Montoya runs away. Carpentier now comes to second, followed by Vassar. Full course caution comes out for Mark Blundell, and the clock is counting right at 21 minutes. This is Mark Blundell.
Magnussen gets through. The back end of Mark's car steps out. He tries to catch it. Doesn't have enough room. Paul Tracy now coming onto the pit chicane. He's got it all locked up. Makes big contact with the outside wall there. You've got to be so careful on these restarts. It's so cold outside. There's no heat on the tires. We talked about the frustrations. Everybody trying so hard to get into the championship, as is Paul Tracy's case. Other drivers just trying to hold on to their jobs. And when it goes wrong in a street course, it goes wrong in a bad way. Both of these accidents, Blundell and Tracy's on a permanent road course, probably would have been harmless spins off into the grass or into a sand trap, but not here in the streets of Vancouver.
It continues to lighten here. The track continues to dry. Here is Montoya, Franchitti behind him. This is just a few seconds to go. Now, that's what I wanted to mention. You may think, and it is possible, that Franchitti touched the back end of Montoya's car. I'm inclined to think, because the car was passing underneath the overpass at the time, the onboard camera signals actually come first to a helicopter orbiting over the track and then are relayed back down. It's a line of sight signal, so that breakup may in fact have been as a result of them passing under the overpass. We really don't know, but those two accidents are going to have incredible implications for the championship as Montoya now leads it alone. Well, we're back in Vancouver, British Columbia. We are under the full course caution as a result of several different incidents. Franchitti, Tracy, Blundell all finding the wall. These are the current standings of the top six. Franchitti did make it back to the pits, and since he only backed it in, they were able to get a rear wing mounted on the car.
And even though Dario couldn't get this done, I've got to hand it to him. He could have barged his way through past Montoya. Instead, he tried to tuck it back in, spun himself around, avoided Montoya. It's a tough route to go, but at least he took the high road there.
Well, I think it's a point, and we probably ought to elaborate. There's the old wing. We'll go first to Jan Bikas.
Well, Dario Franchitti came onto pit road, and they assessed the rear wing damage, and then they sent him back out. Effectively, they came in to see what was broken, and then they got the parts ready, and they're going to try and change it. But now I'm seeing some of the crew members giving the sign, the old hand under the neck. In other words, we may be calling this a day.
Well, that would be awfully tough if, in fact, they did that. You would think, let me see, need to think it over, Franchitti 14th. Well, you could understand that, perhaps, unless you really thought that he could make a substantial move on the rest of the field. What I was going to say about Franchitti, elaboration on what Parker has said, that in the championship with Montoya and Franchitti 1 and 2, there could have been an instant in which Franchitti said, I'll just let it go into Montoya and take us both out and keep the championship equal. He certainly would never, in fact, think of that. He's not that kind of guy. He's going to try and make it as best he can in terms of a race. Did a nice job. Jan, they're back working on it again.
Yes, he's back in, and they are at 27 seconds on the watch right now. The only goal they have is to try and get him back out here before the field goes by. So those hand signals that we saw, I believe, is that if we see this certain damage, then we're going to call it quits. It does not appear as though they have seen that. They're going to try and replace this rear wing assembly, the complete assembly, and get him back out there and give him a chance to try and work back through the field.
Franchitti still on the lead lap in 14th place. Certainly anything can still happen. He can still get back into the points battle here.
Carpentier now is in second. He started 11th. Vassar is third. He started 16th. Gugelman is fourth. He started 10th. Cristiano D'Amata is fifth, and he started 17th. And Helio Castro Neves started 26th. He now runs in 6th place. So Canadians up at the top, at least in the person of Carpentier. Here's how the Canadians have in fact fared here. And they come here, the crowd supports them terrifically here. It's very, very pro-race community. Just witness the fact that the stands are all but full given the heavy rain. Now, let's go racing once again as Montoya leads Carpentier. Remember Carpentier, neck injury at Detroit on the streets there. Now in second place, looking at Montoya. Aggressive, skillful, young Canadian driver.
And look what a great job Jimmy Vasser's done. Remember, only 2 weeks ago it was Montoya and Vasser,
Okay,
first and third.
conserve your rear tires. Conserve your rear tires. That'll be the problem.
And they're back in that same position again. Chip Ganassi telling Montoya to conserve those rear rain tires. It's obviously dry down this long back straightaway.
Again, Michel Jourdain Jr. in trouble against the barrier. And they go full course yellow. Clock is counting just under 13 minutes. Gary Gerald.
This may be a big break for Montoya because now under full course yellow, he can search out those remaining wet lines around there. We heard Ganassi telling him to protect those rear tires as best as possible. During the previous yellow, Juan had radioed in and said that there were 2 turns, 2 of the 12, that were still too wet for slick tires. That's why he is staying on the rain tires. Now having to take the selective line, and the clock continues to tick away toward the checkered flag.
Exact same position we just saw Franchitti go in, coming onto that long back straightaway.
Michel Jourdain was running in 11th place prior to this, and of course with that damage to the rear, that's going to take him out of the run. Chip Ganassi keeps track of Montoya. Will he be able to keep those tires alive the remaining 12 minutes to the end of this run? Race here. So just 9 minutes 47 seconds to go with Juan Montoya in front under full course caution. They're trying to get the course clear of Michel Jourdain Jr.'s car. And coming up next, as soon as this race is over, is going to be World News Tonight, Sunday. We'll carry you to the checkered flag. We won't be able to talk with the winner because we're going to run about 10 minutes over time, but network's going to stay with it. Paul Tracy, incredible problem into the wall, heavy damage to the car. Jan?
Yeah, what a great day for Paul Tracy until that moment. What happened, Paul?
Well, when I got around Juan, when I spun around there and bumped the wall, I think, you know, I'm pretty sure it bent the toe link, and the car was getting increasingly worse and worse oversteer as the toe link was getting more and more bent. And finally, I gave it another brush against the wall, and that kind of bent it even more, and the car was really, really poor in handling, and I was just really trying to stay on the track. And then finally over there in the last chicane, it broke. And I went to the back of the car, and the left rear toe link was broken out in half. So disappointing day for the Team Cool Green, not only for me, but for Dario. You know, we could have probably finished 1-2 if we'd have, you know, kept it off the fences.
Very disappointing day, especially for the Canadian fans. Thanks.
Thank you.
Costly to him in terms of the championship as well. Franchitti being posted currently in 13th, Paul Tracy in 18th. It's Tracy's 4th DNF of the year and the 2nd in a row. Now in 1 week from now, the Champ Cars of the Kart FedEx Series will be in Monterey, California for the Honda Grand Prix of Monterey, featuring the Shell 300, and the coverage there will come on ESPN with the pre-race coverage on Kart Today on ESPN2. That's next Sunday, and then back on ABC on the 26th of September. It'll be Houston, and it'll be good. This battle for the championship is going to relax a little bit now with the finish of this race. Montoya is going to take a healthy bite out of the points, while his closest competitor, his only true competitor, Franchitti, is not going to score into the points, and so that will be costly. But still, you've got Laguna Seca, you've got Houston, you've got Australia, and you've got Fontana yet to run, so it's certainly not over. In our Toyota Spotlight, we want to take just a very quick look at a recap of this race that started at a lot of frustration early on, more than the share of spins against the wall. Saw some of the key contenders being taken out. A very busy and very damp day here at the Concord Pacific Place in Vancouver, British Columbia. Those two are probably the most important, if not spectacular, situations of the day, taking out Paul Tracy, but more importantly, taking out Dario Franchitti, who was the chief contender in the championship against the rookie Juan Montoya, who now leads this race ahead of Patrick Carpentier and then Montoya's teammate Jimmy Vassar.
And as we get ready to go green, this track with only a few places now is absolutely dry. The guys are out on slicks, might be able to make some substantial improvements with just over 7 minutes left.
Going to come down to the line already. He begins to pick up the pace. Green flag flies. Single file into one on what looks like a very dry track. 6 minutes, 7 seconds to go.
The problem they'll face here is the racing line's dry, but offline it's still a little bit wet.
So if you stay online, it's going to wear your tires. You get offline, you're going to need those tires. Montoya, boy, look how the back end comes out whenever they pass through there. Not just the leaders, everyone.
Once again, look how good Montoya is on this restart. Able to gauge the conditions, his own abilities, the car's conditions so well to get the most out of that car right from the green flag.
We're watching the Molson Indy Vancouver World News Tonight, Sunday, coming up immediately after this race. If you've tuned in for that, enjoy the Kart FedEx Championship Series for the final moments of the Molson Indy Vancouver here. 5 minutes, 17 seconds to go. No attempt at any real attack on position. And Carpentier now struggling to keep up with Montoya.
It's going to take a few laps to get some heat into these tires for the drivers to assess the conditions of the track and their cars, but they're running out of time quickly.
Vassar, there is Mauricio Gugelmin. Remember, he had problems. They had to go to the backup car to be able to start this race. Started in qualified position, and it's paying off for him. He's currently sitting in 4th place, driving for Pac West.
And Paul, a huge cheer in the grandstand behind us at turn 1, pit out, as the sun, for the first time today, breaks fully through the clouds. This thing will drive very quickly in the final minutes now, particularly, remember, 2 corners where it was still too wet. Could it be a problem for race leader Montoya?
Well, it could, in fact, be a fairly major problem for Montoya. Sunshine all on the main stretch now.
I just don't know if they've got enough time to take advantage. That is, the slick-equipped cars, if those drivers can take advantage of the guys that are still on reins. Remember, they have to go offline in order to get the passes done, and I think that's where the problems may come. We're watching Mauricio Gugelmin. Remember, it was just 2 years ago that Mauricio won his first and only Champ Car race here at Vancouver. Good to see the Pac West team running so strongly again this weekend.
This thing may be about to pay off for guys who decided slicks is the way to go. It's dry on the line now. Sun is out. Boy, look at how the sun brightens everything up.
Look at Castroneves all over the back of D'Amato with Tony Kanaan looking for a way. Remember, these used to be head-to-head competitors in Indy Lights just a few years ago. There's Richie Hearn.
Richie alongside Montermini. Montermini just behind him. He has had a good run today, sitting in 8th. Everybody lined up here is taking a look at a fight for position. Montoya's 3.2 seconds out in front, but remember, they're concerned about his tires. They may not be able to carry him the remaining 3 minutes to go.
Richie Hearn on slicks, looking for a way past Tony Kanaan. Oh, I don't think you can go 3 abreast down there, Paul. Tony Kanaan trying to go around the outside of Castroneves. Richie trying to go around the outside of Tony. He's obviously much quicker, Richie Hearn is, on these slicks. He just can't figure out how to use that speed advantage.
All of this a fight for place. Got a glimpse of Michael stepping to the inside there.
Cristiano D'Amato's now gotten some breathing room. Look at Richie Hearn. He knows he's got to get this done in the next two and a half minutes.
2 minutes, 15 seconds counting in the run. Montoya out front by 4.4. Battle continues.
Now watch Richie's exit coming off this corner. He turned in very late, exactly what he wanted to do. A late apex trying to maximize his speed down this long straightaway. This is when guys start to get desperate. They know they've got to get it done.
We're back up at the front of the field watching the fight for second, Carpentier and Vassar. And while we will not be able to get the winner's interview on for you here, 8 o'clock tonight, RPM tonight on ESPN2, we'll have it for you. and other summaries of the event. So if you need that extra detail, that's the way we'll get it to you.
Here's Guzman, Damata, Castroneves, Tony Kanaan, Richie Hearn still trying to figure out how to get by here.
Oh, Hearn right in there on Tony Kanaan. This is a great fight that's lined up here. Carries you from Cristiano Damata in fifth all the way back to Montermini, who sits behind Richie Hearn. And Michael's right there, and so is now you take the pass. Now here we go. You're watching back to the front, battle for second. White flag will come out next time by. There's so much going on.
Look at Jimmy Vasser. He's got great exit speed going down this long straightaway.
Vasser wants him.
Whoa!
Carpentier pitches it totally sideways. Big four-wheel drift. Not supposed to do that in these cars.
Nothing like 160 miles an hour opposite lock lined with concrete walls.
Carpentier still holding off Vasser. Battle for second place, Montoya. 6 seconds ahead of these two. Radios to the cars are all but silent now. Here comes Guzman.
We saw Richie Hearn looking to the outside of Kanaan there for a moment before we cut away.
Back in front to Montoya. He will see the white flag. There it is. Montoya now knows there's one lap to go in this timed race. The clock has in fact just run out as he crossed the line. So Montoya flashes across.
Plus 7.5. Plus 7.5.
Second place, Carpentier and Vasser. Don't forget ABC Sports is online at ESPN.com, part of the Go Network. Final lap now for the entire field. White flag out to everybody. Battle still at second. Guzman runs alone in fourth. Then Damata, Castroneves, and that battle between Tony Kanaan and Richie Hearn.
Even on this final lap, look at Montoya slide the car with a 7.5 second lead. He just never slows down, Paul.
Montoya working the final corners now. 7.5 seconds, as Chip Ganassi told him. Coverage coming from CBC.
Go easy, go easy. Don't worry. You're the man. Who's the man? You!
Montoya with a little
Great
dance.
job. You drove like a champion today.
Oh, the congratulations of the team. Here comes the run for second. Carpentier takes second, followed by Vasser. Here comes Guzman, Damata, followed by Hearn, and a close call between Magnussen and Castroneves at the line. So long.